let's talk about Poor Things. Poor Things stars Emma Stone as a woman named Bella, who somehow is birthed into existence. We don't know how at the beginning of the movie. And a disfigured doctor, who she refers to as God, something of a father figure, has created Bella. The circumstances of her creation you may find shocking. And we'll get into that. It's a very simple tale. It's sort of My Fair Lady by way of The Bride of Frankenstein, if that makes any sense, where Bella begins as kind of a child who was almost, they call her this in the movie. She's kind of retarded. She begins to kind of come into her own in this body, and then she discovers something. Bella discovers sex and speaks out loud, how come people just don't do this all the time? She then, after having sex for the first time, it awakens something in her. And while she is pursued by suitors, she is also just interested in finding her own agency. This is a brief synopsis of Poor Things. Alan, would you say that's fairly accurate?
Yeah, it's very brief. It's almost a 2.5 hour movie.
Yeah, so I'm telling you about like the first 5 minutes of the film. Yeah. But this film is sort of part science fiction, but also like she plays Bella Baxter is the name of her character. And this character she's sort of coming into her own body. She was an experiment that was created by Dr. Godwin, who she just calls God, played by Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe in this disfigured makeup, he's sort of a Dr. Frankenstein type person, is fantastic. The world that this exists in is sort of this Gothic Elizabethan era. It's not, I don't know that I would describe it as like, it's sort of a fictionalized version of the 1800s, but with some futuristic elements. So it almost seems like some of the special effects and the settings, when she goes out into the real world, the world that she inhabits in her home is in black and white. When she gets out into the real world, it becomes color, but there are nonsensical things that happen. She has like a dog that has the head of a duck. And these are all experiments that Dr. Godwin has created. But Bella Baxter just wants to go out. She wants to leave the place that she's in to go out in the real world. And every man that she meets wants to lock her down, because it's this Elizabethan type era, or 1800s Gothic, whatever you want to say. Again, this isn't a specific time period. It's like a fantasy version of the 1800s, Gothic 1800s. And she meets Mark Ruffalo's character, is a character named Duncan, who's brought in to draw up a legal contract, and falls for her, and they escape on kind of a whirlwind romance outside of Dr. Godwin's house. She's now escaped out into the real world. And with that, she's just sort of innocent and playful, and everything she takes everything at face value. She literally has the mind of a child. One thing to note about this movie, it is very R-rated, hard R-rated. There's a sequence where Bella I want to get into the details, but she works at a house of ill repute, where she has relations with many men, and there is full frontal nudity. I mean, full frontal nudity of Emma Stone. Lots of, as Alan would say, dongs. So the sex in this film is graphic.
I believe the term I use is peepees.
Peepees is the technical term. If you're familiar with director Yorgos Lanthimos' previous work, films like The Lobster, which I thought was a really great trailer and interesting concept, didn't really deliver in the end. The concept was you had to find a mate by a certain time period, and if you did not find someone who was your love, you would then turn into an animal. And it's a very weird movie. Poor Things is also just as weird, but it's driven by Emma Stone's performance. And as much as like the running time, yes, is 2.5 hours, it didn't, I don't know, for some reason, I was just so fascinated at but just how this bizarre world, right? And the twists and turns. So I really enjoyed the movie, but it's I know it's not going to be for everybody. It's like when you recommend a David Lynch film, it's like a litmus test. Like you may or may not like it. I did not love The Lobster, his previous Yorgos's Lanthimos's previous film, but I really enjoyed this mainly because Emma Stone's character is just so likable because she has this weird childlike innocence. So she's always making mistakes, but it's about her figuring the world out, and she has the mind of a child. So I recommend Poor Things with a warning. This movie is not for everyone. It currently stands at like, I think it's over 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. No, excuse me, 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm actually more curious. That's the critic score. I don't know if the audience score will be as high. It's 8.5 on IMDb. So it's getting a decent Metacritic 89% score. That's positive for me. It's not a movie for everybody. It is definitely hard R rated because I mean you see Emma Stone in the act of sex and they show it a lot. Now, is it graphic sex? No, but you see a lot of stuff. Alan, you see a lot. What am I supposed to say? I'm trying to speak around it. Right?
I mean, full frontal, yeah.
Full frontal nudity, male and female. And especially
she has a lot of sex in the movie.
A lot of sex in the movie, but it's done. I feel like it's done tastefully. For example, there'll be sex scenes, but it's just Emma Stone, and she's obviously riding on top of like Mark Ruffalo. But it is like she's right, and it doesn't just like, oh, it's like we get the idea of what's happening. No, it goes on for a while.
It's tasteful.
It's tasteful because
you make it sound like it's this beautiful Harlequin romance.
It's not a Harlequin romance.
She's riding Mark Ruffalo.
She's riding Mark Ruffalo, and it's her face for like a full minute, like just riding him, and it's like, and she's like,
and then various positions.
Right.
It's hot and it's heavy. Tasteful is not a word I would associate with that.
All right, forget the word tasteful. I'm just saying it. What I'm saying is it could have been more graphic than.
It's short of full porno. Yeah,
it's not a full porno. It's not those close-up shots or anything. It's not that. But what the movie is really about, it's almost like like I said, My Fair Lady meets Bride of Frankenstein. A full-grown woman birthed into existence with the mind of a child that has to navigate the world and she's beautiful as she's pursued by men who want to lock her down. And it's really about a woman finding her agency. I think that Alan, I want to hear what you think.
I clearly I did not like this movie as much as you did.
Right.
It's one of those movies where you kind of first it's 2 hours 20 minutes long, and it felt 2 hours 20 minutes long to me. It was just it was a chore to get through to the end. But certainly I'll agree there were aspects of the movie that I liked and I appreciated it. But it just went on, and when there is a second, third act that occurs in the movie, and when that second, third act appeared, I was like, oh dear God, this movie will never end. And okay, so I mean, it's this is one of those movies that that feels like it's so artistic that I'm supposed to like it, and that's the way I felt about it. It was like I feel like I'm gonna at some point people are gonna force me to consider the art of this movie and say that you have to like it because of that art, and that's the impression I get. I do like the ideas and the themes behind it. The idea that Bella is a full-grown woman with the brain of an infant, and that over time the infant brain grows and develops, and she discovers things. I would say she doesn't discover sex first; she discovers her clitoris first.
Right. That's right.
And she really goes at it. And I mean, I'm not exaggerating in any of these things, and to me also it's the fact that there's a giant world out there, and all she's focused in on is her lady parts, and the interaction of those parts with male parts. And that seems to be like the thrust of the movie, that it is so sex obsessed that it leaves out the the rest of the world and what it's like to be an adult and to discover the world. It feels like she's discovering the world only to have sex with Mark Ruffalo, and that's what the world outside of her home is. And so I'm just so mixed on this one, because I appreciate the ideas. Willem Dafoe is great as the doctor. You completely left out Rami Youssef, who is her betrothed,
Right.
Which is interesting. And I think that's just the thing is, I like the ideas behind it. I kind of wish it had gone at it at a different way than it did in this movie, because it's a tough one to get through, for me at least.
Right. Okay. Well,
it's definitely not meant for general audiences, and I think it'll reflect that.
Okay. This is definitely not a movie. It's not a mainstream movie.
Mm-hmm.
This is a movie that may earn Emma Stone an Oscar for Best Actress.
Mm.
What do you think?
I think it could, knowing the Oscars and the pretentiousness of the Oscars.
Right.
I think you could be right. I don't know that she deserves it. I mean, it's a fully developed character, and again, I appreciate that. But not strong enough for me to really follow. I definitely did nominate her performance for the CCAs.
Yeah, I mean, she should definitely be in the mix. This is not a movie for everybody. And not that it should come with a warning, but I'm issuing a warning that, like, you're going to see sex. It's sort of like this. It's like the movie Texas Chainsaw Massacre. If you watch the film, anyone that watches it walks away like, oh my God, that movie was so graphic. It's actually technically the movie Texas Chainsaw Massacre isn't graphic. It's what happens in your mind. Same thing with the sex in Poor Things.
No.
You think you've seen graphics. What?
It's not in your mind. It's right there on the screen.
Some of it is, not all of it, Alan.
A lot of it is.
Not all of it.
Like, here. Let me find the comment I just
started. No, we're gonna get to comments in a minute.
Nominated for the O face is there.
The O face is 100% there, and it didn't look like she was acting. All I could say is that's what good acting is, when it doesn't look like you're acting. But look, this isn't a movie for everybody. I think it's also like, if you want to like get outside your comfort zone, see Poor Things. So I'm recommending it. It's between a 7 and an 8 for me. But the biggest flaw you pointed out, Alan, I agree with you. I agree with you on this 100%. Too long. What is this with these movies that need a second, third act? You don't need it. It's 2.5 hours. At 90 minutes, this would have been a perfect movie. At 2 hours, it would have been a great film. But at 2.5 hours, it's do I want to spend 2.5 hours seeing Emma Stone naked? Now that I say that out loud, I think I kind of agree that that doesn't bother me as much. But
yeah, it didn't bother me. I was fine with.
You didn't bother you? The nudity didn't bother you?
I appreciated the fact that it was laid out throughout the film, so that when things kind of slow down a bit, she has sex again.
Right. It's sort of like, they definitely like the sex is,
it carries you through the movie.
It carries you through the movie. So, yeah.
And there was a bit of that too.
There was a lot of things in this movie. So there you go.
I mean, look, I know people that I could recommend this movie to, but I know a lot of people that I couldn't recommend this movie to.
That makes a lot of sense. So, all right. So you're giving it a mixed recommendation.
Yeah. God, yeah, barely.
A barely mixed recommendation. I'm recommending it, but you have to know your own taste. Like, for example, you kind of know the things I like. I like horror films that are more psychological, that are less gory. You know, I like sports movies. I do. I like sports films. Those are certain things that I like, right? But the horror films that I tend to like are more psychological in nature and less gory. And then I do like things that are weird when they're good. I like weird. I like weird stuff I like things that get you outside of your comfort zone, that at least swing for the fences and may not make it. And this is one of those movies that I recommend, but comes with a might not be for you. And that's like all of David Lynch, a lot of David Lynch's work. David Lynch had a great quote where he said, this is what David Lynch said about his own movies. He said, millions of people love Steven Spielberg movies. Thousands of people love my movies. He was basically saying that David Lynch understood that his work was not for everyone. And Poor Things fits in that category. If you want to challenge yourself, or if you just want to see Emma Stone naked, there you go. I'll say this, Mr. Skin, who we have reviewed on this channel. Just look up Mr. Skin on the Film Threat YouTube channel. There you go. You know,
yeah, I'll check out later on Mr. Skin.
This is a movie. Yeah. This is a movie that Mr. Skin, I mean, you don't need to take a screenshot. Just put the whole movie up there. It's pretty crazy. So, but there you go. That's the consensus. Mixed from Alan. Recommend with a warning from me.